And just after midnight Friday, the threat of a trade war between the U.S. and China moved from rhetoric to reality. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods. China immediately retaliated with duties on the same value of American products.
Here to tell us where this could lead and how it may affect consumers and businesses is Derek Thompson, senior editor at The Atlantic. Derek, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
What's the end game for the Trump administration here, do you think?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. I think that there are two possibilities if I had to read into his mind. On the one hand, there's the economic reason, and on the other hand, there's the political reason that he's doing this. The economic reason is that it is reasonable to have gripes with what China is doing with regard to its trade policy. What they're essentially doing is forcing Western tech companies to hand over the proprietary data as a precondition for entering the market. That's a no-no. They shouldn't do that. On the other hand, there's the political reason, and I think Trump still sees himself as the kind of talisman of white working-class America, and he's standing up against the world, not just China, but also Canada and the EU, slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum for them, essentially saying, it's us against the world. I'm going to stand and fight for you, even when I don't specifically tell you what it is that I'm fighting for.
But how long is that likely to work out for the president? Because China seems pledged to hang in on this for the long term. The U.S. economy is strong, so it will take time for it to pinch. But this could hit Trump supporters in the Midwest, soybean producers and the like.
I think that's exactly right. Soybean producers, Harley-Davidson has said that they're going to move some of their factories overseas. There's talks that factories might not get investment from banks internationally. When we think about a trade war, I think it's really useful to think of it as a tax war, right? It's a tax skirmish. And the tax skirmish that's going on right now between the U.S. and China is a little bit like two kids who sort of go underwater to test who can hold their breath the longest, right? Because what you're really doing in a trade war is punishing yourself. You are taxing your own companies, your own consumers, and essentially saying, how long can we hold out until my opponent changes the strategy? But here's the problem with going into a trade war with China. China can hold its breath longer than anybody, right? This is a socialist, market-based economy with unelected leaders who don't have midterms in 5 months, who can basically subsidize their industries ad infinitum and are under no pressure to change their strategy in the short term. So we've picked the wrong kid to go into a, breath-holding contest against.
That analogy.
And China certainly is ratcheting up its rhetoric, saying that the Trump administration is a gang of hoodlums. Talk to us, Derek, a little bit about how these tariffs could potentially backfire. You mentioned Harley-Davidson. China, of course, if it were to put tariffs on tech companies, that could really hurt, American companies, but also a lot of companies produce their products like iPhones in China. So
that's exactly
we're all so interconnected. Explain that to us a bit.
There have been 9 own goals in the World Cup so far this summer. That's the highest in tournament history. This is the 10th own goal of the summer. Even if the U.S. didn't enter the tournament, we still found a way to score an own goal. 87% of the computer companies in China that are subject to this tariff are non-Chinese, and a lot of them are American. Of the 30 districts that are most affected by the soybean tariffs that China has now implemented on the U.S., 25 of them voted for Donald Trump. This is a self-inflicted wound. We are taxing ourselves in order to punish China for a completely unrelated tech problem. We should be working with the international community, building alliances, not taxing our neighbors and trashing NATO.
Well, we'll see how far it all goes because it's probably going to escalate from here. But Derek Thompson, thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.